The Liverpool and Manchester Railway was the world's first intercity passenger railway. Passenger railways were not new, of course. The first between Swansea and Oystermouth opened in 1807, but the Liverpool and Manchester was new in offering a locomotive-worked service to a rigorous timetable. For much of its existence, the Liverpool and Manchester only offered two classes of service, first and second class, but unlike today, first class was the fast train, which made as fewer stops as possible, pausing only once at Newton-le-Willows on the hour-and-a-half journey from Liverpool to Manchester. The second class trains were therefore the slow, stopping train, calling at the 16 or so intermediate stations by request only, taking 2 hours between the two towns. It was only in November 1844, with less than 6 months of independent existence left, that the Liverpool and Manchester Railway began operating third-class trains at all. A third-class train being defined as a train which stopped at all the stations, travelled at a minimum speed of 10 miles per hour, at a cost of 1 penny per mile. Tickets had to be purchased 24 hours in advance, and the tickets were written out in full in longhand. Prospective passengers had to give their reason for travelling, their name and address, and details of any next of kin. Tickets were booked according to a way bill, so that each seat in every carriage had an individual number, and a passenger would book a particular seat in a particular carriage for a specific train at a specific time. Passengers were allowed to travel with £60 of luggage for free. In first class, this went on the carriage roof, and in second class, in lockers under the seats. A first class single fare from Liverpool to Manchester cost the princely sum of 6 shillings. The second class fare from Liverpool to Manchester cost 4 shillings. Children of first class passengers aged under 3 travelled for free. Travelling was a rich person's activity. At a time when the average Manchester labourer earned only 6 shillings per week, a second-class train ticket was therefore out of the question. Working-class people were simply unable to travel other than by walking. Whilst timetables advertised departure times, what they didn't advertise were arrival times. It wasn't until 1833 that departure times at the intermediate or second-class stations were published. So it's not really clear how passengers who wished to catch a train from any of the stations between Liverpool and Manchester knew when to arrive at the station to get their train. Finally, it was only in 1841 that departure and arrival times for all stations were published. Out on the line, first-class trains had priority over second-class trains, and enginemen were to be dismissed if their second-class train was running late and held up a first-class train which was running behind it. Second-class trains literally had to give way and had to be shunted off the main line into a refuge siding to let the first-class train pass before continuing on their way. Unlike today, there were no raised platforms for getting into the carriages, and passengers had to physically climb up using the running boards. So quite how ladies in their billowing skirts or patriotic kilt-wearing Scotsmen were meant to climb up into the carriages with any degree of modesty is anybody's guess. The Liverpool and Manchester operated 2 basic types of carriage: enclosed yellow, or as they were known at the time, glass coaches, and the semi-open blue coaches. The interior of the enclosed coaches were deeply upholstered in light brown broadcloth decorated with silk tassels and fringes. There were pull-down oilcloth sunblinds on each windows, and if it became too warm, each window was a drop light. The yellow coaches had 3 compartments which sat 6 persons each. They also had 2 seats on the roof, one of which was for the guard who operated the handbrake and the other for a brave passenger. There were no toilets on board. Food and drink was barred from Liverpool and Manchester Railway property, as well as in its carriages, and smoking was also prohibited. There was no form of heating, and lighting was through oil lamps hung on the outside of each carriage. The blue coaches also had 3 compartments which sat 8 on bench seats. Entirely open to the elements, the second-class coaches had roofs put on and the ends boarded up in the summer of 1831. Although the second-class replica coaches built to run behind Lion in 1930 by the LMS have no roofs or seats, the Liverpool and Manchester Railway never ran such crude accommodation. They're completely inaccurate and best ignored. The third type of carriage were the luxurious mail coaches. These were painted vermilion red and also had 3 compartments, one of which was a coupe, and these compartments only sat 4. The ticket price for these was 7 shillings single, more than a week's wages for a working man. Trains were short and light, no more than 5 or 6 carriages. Each train was accompanied by 2 guards, one who sat in the leading coach and one in the rearmost coach operating the handbrakes. This meant that 2 out of 5 or 2 out of 6 coaches had brakes. And there were no brakes in the locomotive, of course. Therefore, stopping distances were quite long. Under trial in 1838, it was found that it took at least 1,000 yards to bring a 7-coach train to a stand from 25 miles per hour. From 1840, it was ordered that 50% of coaches in a train was to have brakes, but the number of guards to man the brakes wasn't increased, so the effect of this would have been nil. It would have been very easy, therefore, to overshoot a signal and come to grief. It's all a bit scary, to be honest. Having travelled in replica 1830s coaches, I certainly agree with contemporary letter writers that they were cold and draughty, especially the second-class blue coaches, which one irate passenger described as travelling pneumonia wagons. The enclosed first-class coaches are also quite claustrophobic at night, and this effect would be compounded by the large skirts worn by ladies in the period. Rail travellers of the 1830s were certainly a hardy lot, quite literally taking their lives in their hands. It's no wonder, given the poor brakes, that they had to leave details of next of kin at the booking office. Not that anyone could claim compensation, of course, if anything went wrong. I hope you have enjoyed this video, and if you have, please leave a comment below, and we may look at carriages in more detail in the future. You can also show your appreciation by liking, sharing and subscribing, and supporting this channel on Patreon. And see you all next time on Rail Story.